This sign on the east side of Baudette, Minnesota, was vandalized this past week. It's at the heart of a political sign controversy in that city. This week, the council repealed its election sign ordinance. This story in from our news partner, the Northern Light Region newspaper. The Baudette City Council met for its regular monthly work session on Thursday, February 25th. A large crowd of close to 40 individuals was in attendance, all there to show their support for Delvin Reese and a Trump billboard he owns, and Sheriff Gary Fish and his decision not to cite individuals for what the council had determined to be violations of its election sign ordinance. Others were there to express what they felt was their right to keep signs up and our flags flying for the candidates of their choice, claiming they were just practicing their free speech rights. The work session got underway with zoning administrator Tom Eaton giving a quick history of how it came to this point. Eaton explained that the ordinance as written allowed property owners within the city to display election material up to 10 days after the general election, which would have been November 13th. At a December work session, the council decided to extend that time period to January 20th, which was Inauguration Day. Eaton went on to explain that at that time he consulted with Baudette City Attorney Steve Anderson and sent letters to approximately 28 people who were deemed to be in violation of the ordinance. The letter explained that the plan to enforce the ordinance and that January 20th would be the deadline to remove signs, flags, etc. in question. The 20th came and went, and when I sent the names of people that were still in violation to the sheriff's office, they declined to prosecute or send any citations because of what they thought was unconstitutional and a violation of freedom of speech, Eaton stated. Hopefully we can put this to bed. It's obvious that people don't agree with our ordinance, but it's my job to enforce the ordinance as it is on the books, and that's what I was trying to do, Eaton said. At the February regular council meeting, Eaton brought the council up to date on Sheriff Fish's decision, and it was decided that Fish and Anderson would be invited to the work session to work out a solution. Mayor Rick Rohn asked Sheriff Fish if he had anything to say. "I think I made my decision," Fish said. Anderson asked the council what they saw as the issue and what action they wanted to take. "What exactly are we talking about? Should we enforce the ordinance?" asked Anderson. "I think it's more of an issue of a description of what's in the ordinance. I don't think we should start getting into flags or whatever. I think the ordinance had yard signs, the cardboard and paper signs in mind." That's my opinion," said Mayor Rohn. Rohn went on to say, "My opinion may be a little skewed because I still have a Trump 2020 flag flying on my porch. That flag was up there a year before the election, so it was up there outside. That allowed time then, and nothing was said. But now some people are upset about it." Anderson clarified that the state statute allows local governments to enact ordinances to limit the display of campaign signs and material outside of the state's allowed window of time to do so. I would point out that this was pointed out to me when I originally sent the letter to Mr. Reese about his billboard, and it was in violation of our local ordinance, and it was pointed out that the state statute trumped, no pun intended, our local ordinance, but when the window expired, our city ordinance kicked back in, Eaton said. "Correct," said Anderson. "When that happened, I started getting complaints again. People complain about 2 feet of grass in someone's yard. We addressed that. People complain about garbage in someone's yard. We addressed that. I addressed this one because we got complaints about it. If you want to go through the whole ordinance book and start seeing which ones should be approved and which ones shouldn't, I guess that's an option. But I was just trying to enforce it as it is written," Eaton continued. Rohn asked the council if they had any comments. Council member Brock Stibakken said he was in agreement with Rohn. "It's my understanding that we already voted on this a long time ago," Council member Brett Hansen said. "I don't see having an ordinance on the books if we don't enforce it. So there's a question," said Council member Marla Carlson. "Well, that's the issue. The ordinance says banners and signs, so what's the description of a sign?" Rohn said. "I really don't see that is an issue for the council to decide," said Anderson. What's the definition of a sign? Does a flag kit fit the description of a sign? I think it's a bigger picture that the council needs to decide. The idea has been raised that the ordinance may be unconstitutional, and it may be. What I think the council needs to decide is it needs to decide to do something. Do nothing like Marla said, and you shouldn't have an ordinance on your books if you're not going to enforce them. If the decision of the council is to not enforce this, or do you think it's a bad idea, simply repeal that portion of the ordinance. If, on the other hand, the council does want to regulate these type of temporary signs, then what you should do is revise the ordinance, bring it up to date, address any constitutional issues, and then enforce it. And those are the two options I see, said Anderson. Roan then opened up the floor for community input, asking those in attendance to keep any comments civil. I did research the ordinance, began Delvin Reese. Reese explained that he felt the billboard he owns that has come into question would be exempt, citing Section 11.06 of the ordinance, stating that permitted signs are exempt. Reese went on to explain that he pays a permit fee to the state. Anderson expressed his disagreement, saying that when he talks about the payment of a fee, it's referring to the city's fee. Then it needs to be specified in this ordinance. It doesn't say that, Reese responded. Well, I think that's what Steve Anderson is saying. We may need to do away with the ordinance and rewrite it, Roan said. So what's the difference if you have a heritage flag, asked Jesse Labor. You're representing another country's flag, or you're representing with a Trump flag or Biden flag or any other. It doesn't matter. It's your belief. You can go back and attack someone's beliefs. It's a God-given right, for one. Number two, it's a constitutional right. It's your free will. You can't go and attack someone's belief just because it's against your political views. I know that's what's going on here. I think it's a bull. Let's stand up for what's right for your own beliefs. We can't sit here and be quiet about it and let people push you around. If you want to go vote for Biden or put up a Biden sign, no one's going to write on it. That's your right, and everyone deserves that right. At that, the community members in attendance broke into applause. The discussion continued for some time, with discussions of the ordinance applied to bumper stickers or even flags that may be flown to honor other past presidents, such as Abraham Lincoln, or even flags from other countries. Things that became contentious at times, with city resident John Hominick accusing Eaton of carrying out his personal agenda against Trump supporters and saying other high-priority issues are being ignored. You've chosen to take this football and run with it, Tom. Other people also think it's a personal agenda with you. Then they aren't here seeing the complaints we're getting in the office. We've received written complaints. I'm not running this by myself. If you don't know that, you're not paying attention, Eaton answered. I'm paying attention, so are these people, Humanick said. I get that, but they've got to know the facts, Eaton replied. If you want to build a shrine to someone on your property, go ahead. Just don't violate any city ordinance to do it, Eaton continued. At that time, Roan cut Eaton off. The crowd in the attendance was clearly in support of Sheriff Fish's decision to not deliver the citations, as another round of applause filled the room when Dennis Johnson said, I support Gary Fish 100%. After further discussion, Roan made a motion to repeal Section 11.06 Class D, Section 11.10 Class F, with Steve Ocken seconding. Those two sections address election signage. If you did that, that would resolve the immediate issue, and then I would advise that the whole sign ordinance be looked at and amended, Anderson said. Before the council voted, Carlson addressed the room, saying, I just want to make one thing clear. This was not Tom's personal agenda. He has to respond to citizen complaints. A complaint comes first. So to say that he's not doing his job properly or he has a different agenda is unfair. He's a city employee, and we need to stand up for him. He came to us with these complaints, and he said, what do you want to do? And we decided as a council to have him enforce it. Did the city council agree to have him send that letter, Reese? Reese asked the council in reference to the letter saying his billboard was in violation. Each council member responded yes. Did you read the ordinance prior to that? Asked Reese of the council. It was read to us. I understood it as much as a nurse can understand it, but that's why we referred it to our lawyer, Carlson responded. Reese stated he had made a correction, so his billboard is in compliance by spray painting over the 2020 in the message to make it a president's sign and not an election sign once weather allowed him to do it. The ultimate result of this is that I think somebody didn't do his job and it personally affected me, said Reese. Okay, let's leave it at that and go on to vote on the motion, Roan said. Can I respond, Rick asked Eaton. I'd rather not get into a back and forth, Tom. I don't think it's healthy for anyone, responded Roan. With that, the council went on to vote 5-0 to repeal the two sections of the ordinance that dealt with election signage. Anderson said he would begin working on new verbiage with the city clerk treasurer, Tina Renemo, for an amendment to the sign ordinance and present it at a future meeting. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for PageOnePublications.com.